Hi everybody. Today we are here to talk about how to understand why family conflict and caregiving happens. And I'm going to share 4 steps to have important conversations to lead you through these issues. Now, if you're a family caregiver or the person who needs care, you probably have already witnessed or experienced disagreements in your family, either between you and the caregiver, maybe between your children, other family members. So in this video, I'm going to share a couple of examples of why understanding that this happens and why taking steps to either resolve family conflicts after they happen or to prevent them totally is important. And I'll also share 4 steps to kind of work through these conversations. Now, honestly, family conflict, it's a big topic that goes on and on and on. So, because of this, I'm going to do a series of videos this week. So, if you like this video, click on the link to subscribe to my channel. You'll receive new notices about the other videos in this topic. So the why of family conflict can range from simple things like just a lack of trust. I don't trust you. I don't want to tell you how I feel. I don't want to share my feelings with you, to not knowing how to plan out the steps of having a conversation that you know is going to be difficult, that you know may cause hard feelings in your family. Family conflicts can happen because of poor relationships. You and an aging parent, you and your spouse, you and your siblings, you and your grandparents. Family conflict can result from just being afraid, right? I don't know how to resolve conflict. I've never learned how to do this in my life. It can also happen because of denial. So in some families, you will hear people say, well, we don't talk about cancer. We don't talk about that. And so if we don't talk about it, that must mean that it's not happening, even though some of us really know that there's a lot underneath of that. And there's a lot of conflict. So please do stay with me all the way to the end of this video for helpful information and new ways to think about caregiver family conflict and how to resolve it. If this is your first time here, I'm Pamela D Wilson. I'm a caregiving expert and advocate and a speaker. I have over more than 20 years of professional and personal experience. Please, again, like this video, follow my channel, and comment. Even if all you do is say thanks for the video, your participation helps other people find their way here. A lot of people ask me, well, how can I talk to you? Well, it's easy. Scroll down beneath this video. There are links to schedule consultations with me, links to a lot of other helpful information on my website. So let's start by what I call framing the conversation of dealing with family conflict by adding context. You have a person that you care for, or maybe you are the person receiving care. And the relationship is okay, but it's not going so great. It's a little difficult. Now, in a perfect world, you have had a good lifelong relationship with this person. However, we all know that this is not always the situation. Maybe you loved your spouse when you got married, and today, honestly, you don't like your husband or wife very much because of all of the things that have happened, all the water under the bridge, the conflicts that you did not resolve until today. Or maybe you don't like your mom or your dad, or maybe you're the person who needs care. Maybe you are the mom or dad, and you don't like your kids, but nobody else is showing up to help you. So the pleasant and unpleasant realities about caregiving and caregiving conflict, let's get those out of the way. You have 2 people in a difficult situation, and maybe other family members, siblings, aunts and uncles, grandparents. And maybe you don't like the situation you're in, but for better or worse, this is it. This is what you have to deal with. So look at it objectively, look at it with a new set of eyes, look at it from your perspective, look at it from their perspective. These are things that we're going to talk about here. So if you've had a relationship with this person for a number of years, maybe this person, your husband, wife, mom, dad, grandparent, whoever, helped you make difficult decisions in the past. And now you have to make the decisions for this person because maybe your mom or dad is sick, they have health issues, maybe they have Alzheimer's or dementia, and they really can't remember much of anything. So this person who was your mom or dad, the person that you always went to, or maybe they were your best friend or your spouse, they're no longer able to support you in that way because now they're sick, they have health issues, they need your help. So this shift, this seismic shift in the relationship can put the caregiver under a lot of stress and a lot of pressure, especially if you have had to, or if you are having to, learn new skills and navigate uncharted territory, like there's all this conflict and I have no idea what to do about it. People are angry at me. People are angry at each other. And you're thinking, I just don't want to deal with this. This is too much. Well, a practical thought would be, I have a situation. I don't have experience with this. I don't know how to deal with it. Where and how can I get help? Who can I trust to help me? Who actually has the experience to work through these crazy situations in my family to help me? This is the first place that caregiver-family conflict shows up because most caregivers jumped in. They want to do it all. They want to control the situation because it is so much easier. And they don't want to have to ask for outside help because then that means other people are going to get involved. Other people may have opinions, different opinions. They may not agree with the caregiver. So bringing in other people is kind of like, why do I want that help, right? Why do I want that problem? Why do I want that drama? Well, because if you learn how to manage through it, it may take a huge weight off your shoulders. It may be so helpful that you can't even imagine. Because if you don't, eventually, someday, maybe a year from now, maybe 5 years from now, maybe you're a slow burn, maybe 10 years from now, you may be a caregiver who is angry and resentful and exhausted and physically and emotionally sick. You may have a lot of negative emotions about this caregiving situation, even to the degree that, you know what, you are no longer doing a good job for this person that you care for, but you've isolated the situation so much that you don't feel like you have any other options. It's that old saying of, well, we all create the bed that we lie in. Family relationships, complex, difficult, challenging, wonderful, a blessing. Oh my gosh, I love my family, right? Two sides of the coin. They can be even more difficult if you are in a blended family. A blended family means that your biological parents, mom and dad, somehow had a split, death, divorce. And now both of these people have remarried. So you have your mom's new family and your dad's new family, and then your family in the middle from your mom and dad, your siblings, right? Honestly, for many people, it's way more family than anybody wants to deal with. If this didn't happen early in life where you were able to, become friends with your new siblings and your new step parent and all of that just worked out amazingly wonderful. So, in many situations, the conflict that you are currently in is probably just knee deep, neck deep. You're in over your head. And it was caused by your biological parent or parents, or your parent in a blended relationship, not having an initial conversation about when I need care, this is what I want. When I need care, how can you help me? Or will my stepchildren help me? Or who on earth is going to help me? And even more importantly, how am I going to help myself through this? Now that conversation, unless somebody has prior care experience caring for a parent or a grandparent or someone, it usually doesn't happen until there's a crisis situation, your parent's sick, they just received a serious diagnosis. So not a pretty picture. Doesn't happen unless you come across a video like this with someone like me encouraging you to talk about this before something happens, to deal with the conflict before it happens so that you can avoid disagreement and stress in your family and sleepless nights and worry and emotional upheavals. So if you're watching this video, that may be the situation you find yourself in. Or maybe you just kind of came across this video and you're like, maybe I should watch this. Maybe I should be proactive because I don't want all that conflict in my family. I don't want that to happen. Either way, you're in a good place. So, scenario. Let's say that you are the family caregiver, the spousal caregiver. I can probably guess that you do a lot of things. You're constantly running and doing and running and doing. And you control a lot of these things and these tasks, right? With the person and for the person that you're caring for. But let's say that you to date have not had a discussion about what matters to you and what's important to you and what matters to this person that you care for. So you're in this relationship, but you're clearly not thinking the same things. So let me share a couple of stories to illustrate how this happens, and I will use my own family. If you've watched my videos before, you may have heard these stories, so kind of bear with me. So one day my mom comes to me and she's like, guess what I did? I'm like, hey, what'd you do? She's like, well, I bought Dad and Mai's burial plan. And I'm going to be buried in the blue dress and Dad's going to be buried in the brown suit, and we have music and flowers and all the arrangements are done. And of course, I was not ready for that conversation. It kind of just hit me like a brick, right? Bam. And so of course I started crying and I'm like, oh, you're not going to die, blah, 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 blah. Okay. Now, because I was so emotional and I'm thinking, oh my gosh, this is, I don't want to think about my parents dying, my mom dying. The question that I did not even think of asking, wasn't even like on my radar then, was, are you doing this because you or Dad have a serious health problem and you expect that you're going to die soon? That would have been taken, that conversation, to a whole nother level, which actually would have been a very good and a productive level. But because I wasn't prepared for that conversation, and my mom didn't say, hey, I want to talk to you about something. Is this a good time? Or can we talk next Monday? I have something I want to talk to you about. I'm doing some plans. There was no warm up, right, for the conversation. It was just boom, here it is. Okay. So I did not react well. Now, my mom on her side, how she was thinking about this and what mattered to her was, I have 5 kids left. I buried my mother and my father and a lot of other family members. I know how hard it is when somebody dies to have to rush around and put a funeral together and get caskets or deal with a cremation and what clothes are they going to wear and music and all that. So I'm just going to take care of this. I'm going to talk to my husband. We're going to figure out what we want. We're going to put it on paper. We're going to go prepay for a burial or a cremation. So my mom was being very practical, and she was actually thinking about us kids not having to go through this. And honestly, I will tell you, when they both died, it's been, over 25 years. It was a relief, right? It was a relief. But at the time, the conversation just didn't go well. And I don't ever recall going back to say, hey, Mom, you brought this up. Can I ask you a question? I just was kind of like out of sight, out of mind. If I don't talk about it, it's not going to happen. Not a good place. Okay, story number 2. My mom has died. My dad is grieving. And my sister is the primary caregiver, mainly because she was the only one left in town. We had all moved away. Not that we didn't visit and call my dad, but she had to do a lot of the work. And so it was her opinion that it would be way easier on her if my dad lived close to her house. Now, he kind of lived in between, like where she worked, and then he lived there, and then her house was over here. So Dad lived in the middle. And so she tried to convince my dad to sell his house, I don't know, 3-4 times. It was listed. It was on the market. It was like going to close. And at the last minute, my dad's like, no. Okay? So in this situation, what mattered to my sister was convenience and expediency. And if something happened in the middle of the night, she'd have to drive 5 minutes instead of maybe 15 minutes, right? So she was thinking of like efficiency and all that. Now my dad, on the other hand, was thinking, I've lived in this house for 40 years. All my memories are here. I like gardening. I have a big garden in the backyard. That's why I get out of bed every day. I like to garden. I go do that. And if it's winter, then I do other things, right? And by the way, I like my neighbors in my neighborhood. I like to walk around and talk to people and socialize. And I have my dog here, right? That's what keeps me going. The problem was my sister never had the convenience conversation with my dad. And my dad never had the conversation about what was important to him, probably because he didn't want to hurt her feelings. And he didn't want to seem ungrateful for everything that she had done for him, which honestly was a lot, right? So you have 2 people who can't share their honest feelings and maybe come to the conclusion that, you know what, I know this would be more convenient for me, but I certainly understand why you want to stay in your house. And if that's what you want, that's what we're going to do. Story number 3. In all of this, even if you can have these conversations about, I know I feel this way, I know you feel this way, let's compromise or come to some middle agreement, right? There can be some underlying problems that you do not think about because you don't have the experience. My mother-in-law was having a lot of falls, and my husband said, hey, you know what? I think we need to get one of those chairs we see on TV where like you push the button and somebody who's sitting in the chair, they just kind of stand up. And I said, no. You're not dealing with the problem. What is the problem? My husband's like, well, she's falling. That's the problem. And I'm like, yes, but why is she falling? Is she physically weak? Does she have poor balance? Does she lack stamina? Because if you identify the problem and fix the problem, she may not fall anymore. And she may not need the lift chair. By getting the lift chair, you take away her ability to address the problem. And you make her more physically weak. And you make her more dependent on a chair. And potentially a walker. And potentially a wheelchair. And potentially someone else to like help her get up out of a chair and move around. So while you're putting a Band-Aid on what you see as a solution, sometimes you have to figure out the problem and deal with the problem. Okay, so these are all kind of like examples of why families don't have conversations and don't understand what's going on and never get to the problem, right? You're fixing all this other stuff, but the problem is still the problem. It's just covered up. So back to caregivers. Because caregiving is so stressful and so demanding, many caregivers just take control. It's easier. It's more expedient for me. It's quicker. I'm just going to do this. And they take control because it's a way to manage through a challenging situation, and definitely an uncertain situation where all these crazy things keep happening. At least if I'm trying to control it or I'm in control, right? There's some stability in my life. And so what happens though is by taking control, what do you take away from other people? Kind of like the chair example, right? You take away their interest in saying, can I help? You take away their showing up to help. You just kind of slam the door in their face and say, you know what, I got this. I don't need your help. I don't want your help, because if you give me help, you don't give me the help the way that I want it. You become controlling, right? You close doors. And then what happens is one day you get burned out and you're like, hey, nobody's helping me. Well, how did that happen? You created the situation. It's much better to bring everybody into the situation and resolve the conflict and figure out how everybody can get along with parameters. Because as a caregiver, I'm telling you right now, you want help. And if you want help, you have to be open to people who think differently and don't think the same way that you do, and may question what you're doing, right? Which is okay. Those are like productive, good conversations. You have to avoid inflexible one-way thinking that is eventually going to cause a problem that you cannot even imagine today. It cannot be your way or the highway. That may work for you today, but think of this. What about your mom or your dad or the spouse who needs care? Being stuck with you as the only person, the only caregiver in their life. How fair is that to them? And how fair is it to other people in your family that you're saying, hey, I don't need you, I got this, go away, see you later, don't bother me. It's really not fair, and it's not wise, because I know life is not fair, right? But as a caregiver, what happens that day that you burn out, or you have a heart attack, or you have a stroke, and you're like, okay, I'm done, I can't do this anymore. But you've shut everyone else out of your life. You have created so much conflict that it's difficult for anybody to even want to talk to you or want to help you. Even though they may love mom or dad, they're like, I'm not going to help. My sister, my brother, they shut that door. They burned that bridge. How do you think it's going to work out when you need help? Probably not very well. And the big question is, are you going to be willing to say, you know what? I had a big ego. I made a lot of mistakes. I did a lot of stupid things I should have never done. I said things I shouldn't have said. And now, you know what? I need your help, and I'm coming begging on my hands and my knees. Now, I know that this may sound like I'm blaming caregivers for putting themselves in these difficult situations. There's two sides to every story. If you refused help, if you took control, if you took over, if you caused a lot of the situation that you're seeing today, you have to be accountable for that. Now, the other side is that person you care for, your mom, your dad, your spouse, your partner, they also put themselves in this situation, allowing you to take control and isolate them and burn bridges with all of these other family members. And maybe they did this because they were sick and they just didn't want to fight you. Or maybe they felt they had to allow you to do this because this was the only way you would agree to do it. So they were, in a sense, vulnerable to needing help. You, me, we are all going to be in this situation someday. It's much better to learn how to work through this now, when you got a little bit of leeway and you got a little bit of give and take, and you can work through these conflicts. Because honestly, maybe the person you care for, they had to zip their lip or bite their tongue because you snapped at them a couple of times and you made them feel bad about not appreciating your help or questioning what your choices were or something like that. And so now they too are like, I'm not saying anything, I'm not doing anything. I realize I'm stuck in this situation and I don't like it, but you know what? I have to live with it. So in all of this, you, your mom, your dad, your spouse, maybe you didn't know how to resolve conflict, or you didn't know how to work through disagreements or situations, or to have the hard conversations to say to a sibling, well, I know I maybe told you I didn't want help, but I do want help. Can you help? Why can't you help? Or maybe your parents want to ask those questions, but you know what the problem is? Like me and my mother and the burial, I couldn't say, are you or dad dying? Do you have a serious illness that might make me think this is why you're planning your burials? I emotionally was not ready to have that conversation. And even more, I didn't want to know the answer at that time. We don't have conversations because we're afraid of the answers. We don't have conversations because we don't know how to have the conversation. We don't know how to plan it. We don't know how to frame it. We don't have conversations because we don't want to make hard decisions. All of this results in so much family caregiver conflict that can be avoided if we're willing to have the strength and have the fortitude and say, you know what? We have to talk about this. Because honestly, sometimes things go so far, there are no good solutions. Maybe you're choosing between option A that you don't like and option B that you really don't like. Working through conflict and investing time in family relationships, either assuming that these relationships are important to you or recognizing that in a biological or in a blended family, these relationships are necessary, that you need these people and they need you to work through this for the benefit of your parent, your mom, your dad, or the person who needs care. So in closing, how do you do this? And this will be another video, so I'm just giving you 4 things to think about. How do you decide on the information, the problem, the message that you want to convey so that you can plan the conversation, even if you have to write it out, even if you have to practice it 5 or 10 or 20 times? That's number 1. Number 2 is, how's the information going to be received? So going back to, my mom and the burial plan. Did she expect me to cry? Did she expect me to ask her questions? I don't know. She's gone, right? And since I wasn't the one initiating that conversation, I couldn't think of how should I react? If she would have given me some warning and say, hey, I want to talk about burial plans, maybe I would have had time to think about, okay, how can I be calm? What questions should I ask? So unless you say to somebody, hey, I'd like to have a conversation with you about this. Do you have time? When will you have time? These are kind of the things I want to talk about, okay? That way you can kind of think about, okay, if I'm having the conversation, how do I think the receiver is going to react? Or if I'm on the receiving end, how might I react? Or how might the person talking to me react? You got to kind of think about this. Now, you can think about it too much and worry about it too much, but it's going to happen. Number 3, you're having the conversation. How do you manage it? Can you agree to just listen and be open-minded and not argue and not disagree? Even if you disagree, you can always say, I need more time to think about this. I'm feeling a little bit emotional right now. Or I don't know if I can agree to that. I need more time to think about it. Because when you allow your brain to catch up with your emotions, it usually goes a lot better. So, manage the conversation, keep it on an even keel, no ups and downs, no drama. Come back and have another conversation. That was number 3. Number 4 then is, you follow up with the conversation and you talk about next steps. And you may be flexible about working with somebody who's willing to help you and gain a bigger perspective about resolving all of this conflict in your family. For those of you who stayed to the end, I thank you so much for being here. Please, again, like the video, follow my channel so that you can receive future videos in this series, and comment, even if it's only to say thank you for the video. Your participation helps other people find their way here. If you're wondering about me, my background, how to contact me, how to talk to me, everything's below this video. All the links are there. You can click and learn more. Thank you for being here again. I look forward to seeing you all again soon in another video.